for. You're going to be architectural technologists. So don't believe that you're going to be an architect or a designer when you come out of state. And that it might be so on a smaller scale in a smaller firm, maybe in the housing industry. You're not going to find a lot of architects, I think, that eventually go to a housing to the housing industry and work on that, or especially to a house builder's location, because they want to design buildings and whatnot. So sometimes technologists end up in the housing industry, working for a house builder and doing technical drawings, is perhaps even offering some design input. So you recognize that, you know, you've got a 2-year education mostly on the technical side, and you're going to be competing with, from a design perspective, if that is the desire that you want to take your career in, you're going to be competing with architects who've spent 4 years in the industry or in university, and then come into the industry and start working. And honestly, they know nothing about technical drawings, because they don't give any of that information to them, and they learn as they go and get involved in doing production drawings when they're in a team environment. And we basically have to educate them on, you know, the real technical things that you are learning in school. They probably do a little bit of that stuff, but you know, it's just a brush over. Whereas you guys get the full bore of technical stuff and maybe the brush over of design, so that you understand what the collaboration is between design and technical drawings. However, I must say that even as a technologist, you have a great deal to offer in terms of design. You know, when you get in an office, you're designing details. You have to respect the design of the architects, because you're going to be taking their design drawings and transposing them into construction documents. And you have to respect their design. Not always will the design be capable of doing what they want. I'll give you an example. You know, some architect wants to have a canopy at the front entrance that projects out 20 feet or 6 meters and doesn't want to have columns. Well, how practical is that? And yes, there potentially are a number of different ways to do this. And so, you know, that's where we come in as technologists, as we're the sort of the bridge of understanding construction, working with our consultants to try and figure out how you're going to put this building together, respecting the architect's design. But there's always going to be that collaboration between the architectural team, the designers of the team, and the technical team. Good traits. Well, first of all, a good technologist, I think, has a good sense of design, because although you might be designing details or doing details that might be building envelope acceptable, maybe they're not necessarily aesthetically acceptable. So I like to think that we scrutinize the details so that they're respectful of the design, and collaborate with the architects to make sure that, you know, an example I gave in the last session we had here, and I think, was that if you have split face block, and I'll just kind of squiggle this, squiggle, 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 split face block has a really rough edge. You could put a window against it, but then the sealant, or as we call it, caulking, everybody knows it as caulking, gets put along the window frame. Now you get the caulking that starts off wide and narrow, all the way down the line. Well, maybe that's not necessarily acceptable from an aesthetics perspective. It works from a performance perspective, but maybe aesthetically isn't as pleasing. And there are different ways to approach how to seal that window, and how to come into the window with that split face block, or vice versa. So those are things I think I'm going to emphasize to you as students, is although you're doing technical drawings, also think about how you can improve them from an aesthetics point of view and still maybe technically sound, because that's really going to be improving the world from an architectural perspective, because that's what our architects expect in dialogue. They want to make this thing look, you know, different than the average, if you will, a step up, and still perform well. And there are situations that I've been challenged with at the NCL, where the architect of record, design architect of record, Snowhead out of New York, said, I want to have the glass in flush with the brick, or flush with the precast. Well, there are building envelope challenges that we overcame. And you can go, I said this before, if you go to the walkway between the Salvation Army and the and the new central library at grade level. You'll take a look at that piece of glass. It's there. It's been performing for 2 years. It works building envelope wise, but it's not common. You don't necessarily see a piece of glass that is insulated sealed unit piece of glass that is outside, flush with the outside face of the building skin. That's not normal in today's industry, but it was a challenge that I took on. We made it work. We had a building envelope consultant that I shared the details, suggestions, and he said, works perfectly. So those are things that I challenge you as students to think. You're not architects, but you're designing details that are going to be built and to do the best you can to make that detail and how the building is going to look in its best aesthetic means. Okay, so good traits of a technologist: be resourceful. I said the word intuitive earlier. Ask questions, propose solutions, be responsible, take ownership of what you're doing. See what tasks are ahead of you. It's nothing worse than coming to the office after a long meeting in the afternoon and somebody sitting there and say, well, you ask somebody, what did you do? And you say, well, I didn't do anything because you didn't tell me what to do. I think that's important that you kind of understand the things that are needed. I mean, you're doing that in school. You need to you start with a set of drawings, and eventually you're going to end up at a net result in the end. So you have some kind of inclination of what needs to be accomplished. Take that to heart. Just say, come to your project manager or your job captain, or whomever you're working collaboratively with, and say, look, I see this needs to be done. Can I do that, or do you have something else for me? What would you like me to proceed with? And I think that shows a little bit of foresight on your part. And I know as a job captain, if somebody like you came to me and said, hey, I see this needs to be accomplished, I'd say, good point. By all means, go and do this, and make sure that you communicate with these people to make sure that we're not stepping on toes and so forth. And I guess that's the other thing, is communication. Be a good communicator, and also communicate about what you're doing, so that you're not, somebody isn't actually working on the same task that you're working on, and then it becomes counterproductive. Listen and learn and be humble. I said that. I don't think I said that. The other thing I think is think outside the box. We all see details that are very common, and that's fine. But I think the computer wasn't here in front of us 30 years ago, and that's what I'm saying. Think outside the box. Somebody could develop the computer, so there are going to be things that will come up in your career path that are going to be new and innovative and whatnot, and you're going to be part of that. So think outside the box as we do every project. I've coined a phrase over the years. It's called book smart and street stupid. So I hired a person many years ago that had a 4.0 grade point average, and that's fine. But over the course of 4 years, and fortunately after 4 or 5 years, we parted ways because things weren't happening. And that's the reason I coined that thing, is that this industry isn't all about what you learn in a book. And that's why I said the foundation of what you're being taught gives you the knowledge to be able to take that forward and invent things. Because really what we are is we're inventors. We're inventing buildings. We're creating designs and buildings and making sure that they're in fact going to be perform in a proper way, be it energy efficient way, aesthetically, and a whole bunch of things, building on performance. So we're inventors. And so take that to heart and make sure that the things that you do on a daily basis, that you remember that. Let's see where we're at here. Yeah, I was going grade point, 4-point average. So I think it has to be, in this business, you have to have common sense. You have to have foresight and be intuitive about what you see in front of you. And, don't get me wrong, make sure that, any kind of education with a higher grade point average is of course of value, but we have to bridge that with common sense and practicality. so that you become a more rounded person. You just cannot do this business from a book. And that I think is enough to be said about that point. Not everybody can be a leader. Understand that in this career path, and we had one of our best technologists. This particular, unfortunately, he passed away due to a brain tumor, but he was a guy who just wanted to sit at his computer, come to his computer on a daily basis and work and produce quality drawings that are complete, so somebody could build the building from it. He didn't want to deal with consultants that much. He didn't want to deal with project managers, didn't want to go to meetings, and that's all good and fine. So if you're a very shy person and that kind of exposure to the outside world, I'll say, that's fine. But internally, you have to make sure that you collaborate and whatnot. You can't just sit at your desk and not communicate, because that won't get you anywhere. So there is a career path for everybody with everybody's ambitions out there. So keep that in mind. If being a team leader and a project manager like I was is not your cup of tea and it's not in your DNA, nobody's asking you to do that. That will just come naturally. I've never asked to be a particular person. I just did it. And I think that's another thing I wanted to emphasize too, is that, and I said this earlier, I've had people come to me and said, I want to be a project manager and I want that on my business card. Well, for me, and I may have said this in the previous session, is that I could go to a meeting and not hand out a business card without my credentials and participate in the meeting. And I think at that point, people will kind of understand who you are and where you are in sort of the food chain, if you want to call it that. So I think from that perspective, a title is a title, but you have to be respectful and be able to perform to that title. Getting a title before that is not going to serve you any good, and it's not going to serve the firm any good, because, client could come back to you and say, Jesus, David gave me his card. He's a project manager. He certainly doesn't perform like a project manager. Why do you have that? Why do you allow him to put that title on his project, on his card, if he's not performing to that level? So I think you need to perform to the level. Be humble. People will know who you are and what you are. The business card doesn't really, it really will give you a bit of an edge in terms of what will be expected of you, but you have to perform to that level too. Planning is critical. I think in every project, and you're doing that at school, is do a work plan. And I came to some of the sessions last year. Don't know if I touched any of you, not physically, but whether or not we participated. And I shared some of my information with work plans. And this 8.5 by 11 that I'm holding up here with some notes, I would take that at the beginning of the project and sort of scribble on it exactly what it is, and maybe cut and paste, and maybe do some Bluebeam PDF stuff of the design things, and put together basically a booklet, which would be a rough draft, if you will, of what the drawing set will be, so that you kind of have a roadmap. That becomes a roadmap of what you need to all accomplish. And then, of course, we put hours, the number of hours that we think that each of those tasks are going to take, and then we assign people to them. And in your case, you are the people that's going to do all of that work. And so we have to refine it to make sure that we're not overdrawing. We're not necessarily, but ensuring that we have enough information on those drawings that you could build a building from. So a work plan and a cartoon set of documents is really early. And for those, you're just getting into this thing. If you haven't done it, for those who are doing it, just take the time, take an hour or two to think through about what your ultimate set of drawings is going to be, and do a 11 by 17, 8.5 by 11, scribble it out, and get that roadmap of where you're going to start to where you're going to end. The other thing that is important for you in the career path is when you wake up in the morning, to be energized about the work. And that's what I tell when people are hired, I hire, is that we want you to come to work energized, happy, ready to get on with the day of work. Because if you're energetic, you're going to accomplish a lot during that day. And if you're not, and you're coming and you're sick, stay home. If somebody offended you in the studio, we need to know about it. Um, Basically, what I'm saying is that you should be comfortable to come to work and be happy every day that you come to work, because that's going to be the best. You're going to perform to your best in those scenarios. And if anything bothers you, there are people, HR, myself, or anybody else that you may work with, I would hope, and wherever you ever land your careers, that you go and talk to and say, something's bothering me. I'd like to get it off my chest, and then so that you can perform to your highest level. Rome wasn't built in a day. You take time to your career path. By the way, I wanted to just share this with you, is that I have a way of describing different levels um, of, of skills in the industry. You've heard junior technologists, you've heard intermediate technologists, you've heard senior technologists, and all those kinds of things. So let's deal with those three. So I say you're a junior at day one when you walk into somebody's studio or wherever you're going to work for. You're a junior, you're going to start to learn. You're an intermediate junior at year 3, and you're a senior junior at year 5. Year 6, you're a junior intermediate. Year 7 or 8, you're an intermediate, and year 9, 10, you're a senior intermediate. And what I mean by that is that each of those levels, and of course moving on, then you become a junior senior and an intermediate senior and a senior senior. By the time you get to year 20 in your career, you can consider, hopefully, you are a senior working on complex projects. I've seen a lot of things in your career path, and somebody could throw you a project and you just go with it. But I give you that scenario simply because I think it gives you a bit of an understanding of where you're going to be in your career path. When you get to this junior, senior, junior, at that point you could probably start working on some very simpler projects, working on your own from begin it from the beginning to the end. You could be considered to be a junior project manager for that matter, or a junior job captain for that matter, and sort of take everything under your control. And I'll give you a little, maybe it's an A&W building, right? It's a smaller project. It has all of what a big building has, the mechanical, electrical, structural, all of these things, the municipal, the civil, the parking lots, and all those kinds of things that happen. And by the time you're into that category of your 5 years, you probably will have touched all of that. In some cases, yes, and maybe in some cases, no, depends. If you get into a project that is a 5-year project, like the cancer project, or maybe even some longer duration project like the IFP, which is the International Flight Project at YYC. There could be years that you're working on a project, and you might be just assigned a particular task. You are going to be doing floor plans, and that's all you're going to be doing in this project, or you're going to be doing reflected ceiling plans. And that's all okay. You get to touch a very large project, but what you don't get from that exercise is the ability to see some of the other things that happen that you don't get that experience. But that being said, depending where you're going to land and what project you get put on, when you start your career, will determine how quickly you can get to touch all of the different aspects of a project. And I would certainly encourage you to say, hey, look, can I do something besides that? Because I want to round my experience to other aspects of a project. Yeah, you're doing stair details, but you don't want to do that for 5 years on a project. Maybe you want to go on to do some site planning stuff, or you maybe want to do wall sections, or maybe want to do, some other technical detailing and round your career so that as you grow your career, you're getting aspects of all of the project, working with the consultants, coordinating with the consultants. We can't put the ceiling height at this level because the duct's in the way. Doing those kinds of coordinational things. Where did I go here? Okay. Okay, so I guess the other thing is understand time is money. So if you're in the architectural industry, we're given a fee, and it's a maximum fee to do a project. It's not infinite. Some projects we have worked on where we have been on an hourly basis, but they're far and few between. Typically, we would propose a fee to do a particular project, and we have to work within that fee. Now, if the client makes changes along the way, we can say we want more fee. But time is money. So to continually recreate and reinvent or revise things that could have been done properly the first time costs money. And so it's important to be very vigilant to make sure that you're doing things accurately, so you don't have to do rework and go back and rechange things. And sometimes it happens because maybe it didn't quite work for whatever reason. But try to minimize rework when you're doing technical drawings and working with the team, because time is money. The process of, I'm going to step a little bit into, is there any questions to this point? Does anybody have anything? I'm a motor mouth and I just keep going on. If anybody wants to chime in, just say so. Shall I just carry on then? Okay, I'm getting thumbs up from some, so that's great. Okay, so project process. And I don't know how much of that is being taught with you, and some of you might be first-year students, so it's new to you and you're kind of finding your way in terms of this career. So sometimes on a complex project like the cancer project that we've got in construction now, there's a process called programming. And programming is essentially understanding what the client's needs are. It is finding out that in an operating room you need certain things, and we would do data sheets on room by room basis that identify the stuff that goes into that room, mechanically, electrically, you name it. And sometimes they're simpler and sometimes they're more complex. That gives you the basis to start a design, because now you understand what the client's program is and what he's expecting and what building you're going to need to design for him. You take that information and start designing. Of course, you need to understand the site that you're working with. You need to understand the orientation of streets and services that are that you're going to need to tie into this to make the building functional, and all of those things come into play. So that starts the programming, starts that, and you move into what's called SD or schematic design, which is starting to develop a plan, socializing that with the client. Is that really the building that you want? Is really that the layout that you want? Is that working for you? Did we miss something? Did we include everything? All those kinds of things. And then, you get a sign off at the schematic design. And even at the schematic design, the client might want to see, well, what does the building look like in elevation? Is it, from the street? What are the materials? What are you proposing? And where are the windows? All these kinds of things. And that gets into the schematic design stage. And then in the design development stage, you start to think about it more on the technical side and start developing details, organizing that cartoon set that I had mentioned, understanding how many details you need, defining where all those are going to be on your, to get that roadmap or that booklet of where you're going to start and where you're going to end. Then after that, we call it construction documents or CDs as the acronym. And that is basically getting your completion of your construction documents so you can get that out to the contractors for pricing, to understand what the project price is. And the owner then agrees on the price, and then the construction can start. Now, after that, and what I'm involved with right now is contract administration, which is basically the building is in construction and you're dealing with the contractor on a daily basis. They're sending in shop drawings. I'll get into that a little bit. RFIs, request for information, communicating with you on a daily basis if there's any issues that you need to have during the course of construction. So it's my responsibility to be able to answer those. And of course I have my colleagues, which will be in mechanical, electrical, structural. All of them have, each of those disciplines have their own contract administration personnel to also be part of the project as it's moving into construction, and we have to go to meetings, which I was at this morning, and I have to go to another one, and that excuse me, and so that gets the the project flowing. And so shop drawings, I'm going to explain. Do you guys ever heard the word shop drawings? Okay, so bottom line is shop drawings. Our drawings are generic. We might say window as an example. But what kind of window? And I'll also relate this back to specifications, because along with the drawings comes the specification. And I should dumb this down a bit. So we have window. We might say window, triple glazed sealed unit window. But it doesn't tell you what manufacturer or what kind of window or any of the specifics of the window. That's why we have a specification. So I kind of give a dumbed down version of this. If you had a site plan and you saw a car and it said car, you'd go to the specification, you'd look under the section that says car, and under the section that says car, it'd say BMW, it has all these features and yada, yada, yada. So it's no different in construction materials, same kind of thing. It will define the quality of the product. Now, what happens after that, when the prices come in from the contractor and we say, yeah, the bids are good for this particular project, and they start to make submissions of shop drawings, which are basically manufacturers' drawings. They submit these to the architect, to us, or the mechanical, electrical, and that applies to every discipline. They submit these shop drawings that tell you what they're providing. We have to review them relative to the design and the specifications, and basically earmark them as check mark. Yes, they meets the requirements of the technical drawings and the specification. We might put some comments and markups on them if they've missed something, or if they've really missed it, we would send them back as revise and resubmit and put some notes as to why. But those are fabrication drawings, and those get sent to us, and those are what we call shop drawings. And we review them during the contract administration side of things. So I get to see this over. I got like 60 on the Lincoln Block Tower right now. Not all of them are my responsibility. There would be mechanical, electrical, and structural responsibilities of the shop drawings that are currently in the queue for us to return. And of course, we only have a short period of time to do that. It's not infinite. So our contract says that we have to have these reviewed and returned to the contractor in order to keep the construction schedule on pace. We need to return them within a 2-week or 10-day working period. Sometimes take a day. Sometimes it takes longer because a number of people have to touch it. Different disciplines have to touch it. So that's part of the course of what I do during my daily basis. So I'm going to step into a little bit of where career opportunities for you, because it's not just in an architect's office that graduates from your program, from the SAIT or the NAIT or the technical program can go. There's all kinds of opportunities in the industry. I just said shop drawings. That's working for manufacturers like windows and any other manufactured product out there. Steel shop drawings, steel industry, anything that has to work with it. You can work in the sales side of things, working for manufacturers that come to architects' offices and promote their product for use on a project. So you can be a sales representative for construction materials. You can work for a developer, working with them, perhaps producing some drawings, working with architects. You can work on the engineering side. Back when I graduated in the industry, when I was going to school, I was actually doing a number of different types of drawings. And now it's that education has split into different disciplines. I was in the program I was doing structural drawings, I was doing mechanical drawings, and we were doing electrical drawings, and I was doing architectural drawings. Well, my interest was in the architectural side. Although when I first applied for projects out there, I applied to both engineering and architects firms. And the first one, a few interviews I went to, I actually accepted a job in a structural engineer's office. But my desire was to be in an architect's office. Then I got an opportunity to work to get an interview in an architect's office, which I did, and they actually hired me. And so I have to phone the other engineering company and say, my desire is to be an architect. They hired me, so I appreciate the offer, but I'm going to have to decline. So you can work for a municipality. There are a number of people that I've worked with through the industry who are actually plans examiners at the municipality, at the city of Calgary, and at the city of Edmonton, where I used to where I started my career. Where else? Sales representative, contractors. You can work for contractors too. So anything that's essentially anything that is basically construction related, you have an opportunity to get a job there. It ranges from the municipalities where we have to submit our drawings to get a building permit for, to anything that touches construction. So you need to determine where your focus is. And of course, once you graduate, you'll have to also determine whether, where the jobs are. And I know right now there's a struggle. I'm still get communication with a number of graduates from last year who are asking if we're hiring, and we're not in a position to do that because we still have some people due to the pandemic and the slowdown in the economy. We're working on shortened work weeks for some of the people, anywhere from 3 to 4 days. I was on a 4-day work week for a while, and then as things ramped up, I went back to a normal week. And then there are still some people who are on short-term layoff. Well, it's now been 6-7 months that those people have been on layoff. So we're hoping that things kick up. As I mentioned, some of the projects are coming to fruition, and I see things changing. But that just gives you a perspective of where you can go with your career. LEED accreditation is good. Obviously, that's important in these days. Getting LEED accredited and more projects are getting LEED recognized. Energy efficiency, that's big. So anything that you can tailor your education towards in terms of energy efficiency and be part of that is going to be a bonus in your career path. And of course, I'll promote the specifications. If you're I'll call it a bookworm, that might just work for you in terms of being a specification writer. And of course, the local chapters of the specification group have programs that you can learn about specifications, how to write specifications. Then it's like anything else. Once you get that education, you start working in an architect's office under the tutelage of a more seasoned specification writer. And in fact, in our studio, we were looking at succession planning for architects. One of our senior people who's now retired, and I said, well, and we had another 2 specification writers there. I looked around the studio and I said, Italo, I think he has the right DNA to be a specification writer. So one day he was walking down the stairs in our studio and I said, Italo, I want to talk to you. Have you ever had any interest in specification writing? And he said, I've just been taking the course. And that actually kind of set the precedent. So now he is actually one of our junior specification writers. I would encourage those who in this industry that have an interest in that area to maybe think about that as a career path, because I think there are very few specification writers, and it's very good because everybody wants to be a designer. Everybody wants to design because that's glamorous, but the specification writers really hold a deal of value in the industry, and it's kind of like a dying breed for some respects. But so I'm not seeing too many young people take on that role. But that's something that I think you can look into in terms of career path. And if you have any kind of interest in that, I would certainly guide you towards one of our young, an associate, Stephanie Fargus, in our office. She can be reached through the receptionist. If you 245-5501, and then you can just say, can I speak with Stephanie Fargus? If I spoke too quickly about that, it's 403-541-5501. I think, is that what I said? 245-5501. Sorry to mess you up. 245-5501. That's our switchboard. Ask for Stephanie Fargus. Tell them that DMAC suggested that a career path in specifications might be of interest to you, and I'm now chiming in. Can you give me a little bit of guidance? She'd be really happy to hear from you. And we actually had a student specification writer in our office through the pandemic, for that matter, working with Stephanie, and Rick Adams was our senior specification writer. So that's another career opportunity for you guys. Okay, so I think for the most part I've rambled on and given all of, I think, what is important for you as a technologist. Now, there was a question that Jose had posed to me that came through earlier, and what do we want to see is in terms of a portfolio when we submit a resume. And I think the most important part is, first of all, I said right off the top that you are not architects, and I'm going to tell you that a lot of times when we've got people that come in, whether it be a job shadow or I don't know whether or not they're going to offer this to you, but given the pandemic, but they're the first year students on their communications class, I think they have to come in and interview a technologist, ask a bunch of questions, and then do a presentation. I don't know if that's still going to be in the first year's curriculum. If it is, I might be hearing from some of you. But I would spend an hour to 2 hours with students. One of the things I'd ask for the thing before we get into this session, and they would send me questions in advance, so I can give some thought to it. I usually do everything off the cuff because that's easier for me. Is I love design, and I think that's one of the first things you don't want to say when you go to an interview, or when you maybe put your resume in the front of somebody like myself who is a technical person, hiring for technical purposes, not design purposes, to suggest that you love design. I would guide you in that, saying that's not a good thing to do. Certainly, if that is a resume that lands in my desk. I'm going to give you this one little bit. Years ago, we used to be, when we didn't have Revit, we had we had AutoCAD and whatnot, and I would see resumes that would come to me from the industry saying, "I'm an AutoCAD operator." Well, the first thing that comes to mind when I see that description of what this person is I operate AutoCAD. You tell me how to do it. That's not who we're looking for. We're not looking for somebody to just be an inputter of data that we feed the person, because that's what it tells me. If you're an AutoCAD operator, you're looking for the information to be given to you in order to input it into the computer. That's not who you're being trained to be. That's not somebody that you should be. And if you're going to be that person, it's going to be short-lived. I'm going to tell you straight off, it's going to be short-lived in any studio if you're going to be continually being told what to do right along the whole way. I can expect that in the first couple of years as a junior tech, because you're learning. But once you get a flow of work going, I think you need to understand that the diet of work that you're given is for you to think about it, to come back with solutions, as I said earlier, be intuitive of what needs to be done, and hopefully work to the guidance that you've been given, without being asked to say, "Show me what to draw." You might be told what to draw, but we're not going to show you what to draw. And that's kind of that. And now, so when a submission comes in for a resume, you can submit a portfolio. I think the important part of the portfolio would be the technical drawings that you produced at school. Yes, I think some design stuff is important too, because that gives us a bit of an understanding of where your aesthetical side, or your design side, for lack of a better word, is. It gives me a bit of perspective, but I think the key piece to that would be your technical drawings. Do your technical drawings look organized? Are they quality drawings? Does this person understand building technology? Those kinds of things. So I think that's important. And of course, any kind of previous references will be helpful as well. Other than that, let's see, I had some questions from previous students. What does your typical day look like for an AT working in a dialogue? Well, it depends on what level you're at. If you're going to be at a junior tech, you're going to be working pretty much, come in the door, sit at your desk, work collaboratively with a team. When it comes to me, like, it's phone calls, it's emails, it's going to meetings, it's Zoom meetings, it's solving problems. That's my daily diet. But of course, it depends on where you are in your career path. Are you working on a project? We talked a little about that. What is your company culture? That was, I think, from a previous session that came through. And I think the company culture actually is pretty loose. In our office, I think we allow people to do what they want to do. And I think when I say it's relaxed, it's nobody's, there isn't going to be saying, at this time of day, you have to produce this, and at that time of day, there might be deadlines for sure, but I think it's relaxed. It's fun. I think we want people to ask questions, be collaborative with the team, be part of the solution in a basic way. So our culture is pretty loose, and it allows people to I said earlier in this presentation, you can learn it and at your own pace. And I think in our studio specifically, we don't say, you know, don't do that. That's my responsibility. But we'll allow you to do that if we believe that you have the skill set to do something, and we'll say perfect. And in fact, one of the principals would always say to me, when we go into some of the interviews, they say, what you can take away from me, what the responsibilities I think I have in terms of performing some of my work. If you can take those responsibilities away from me, I can then go on and do other things. Things that maybe don't afford the time that I have right now, thinking I have to do all of these other things. So I think work at your, work at your own pace, but also be productive, and also don't be afraid to take on more challenges other than what you're just given, because people will just say, yeah, go ahead, do that. We're not going to have the reins and hold you back in terms of your ambition to gain more knowledge and to grow your career path at a pace that you want to. We'll never do that. And in fact, it's beneficial for you to do that, because your success is our success. And that's the way I like to tell it to everybody. If you're successful and are continuing to be successful, then you're going to make the firm successful. Work-life balance. I think more so in today's career path, that I think that's everybody's interest. A little bit of a story, if I may. I was working lots of hours, and I said to one of the principals, I said, I'm supposed to be on vacation this week, but I'm going to go. This was on a Tuesday. And the principal said to me, no, you're going on vacation at the end of today. And I had already taken my wife out to our camping spot, came back into town to continue to work that week. And he said, Martin Sparrow, who's no longer with the firm, is going to come to your desk at 5 o'clock. He's going to escort you to your car. He's going to take your keys away to the office. And that time it was a fob, the electronic fob to get you in. And you're going to go on vacation. You're not going to come back till the middle of next week. And I adhered to that. But I think the important part of this whole thing is the work-life balance. There's going to be times that you're going to be asked to do longer hours because you have deadlines, or maybe there's been changes or something like that, and we have to do that. But I think by and large, we try to keep a work-life balance for the most part. I'm going to turn it back over to you, because I think time's running out here in terms of our time here. It's about 6 minutes. So anybody have any questions? This is typical. I usually answered all the questions through my presentation.
David, I have a quick question here for you.
Sure.
In terms of the, I guess, decisions that, say, a junior architectural technologist would make versus a senior, can you speak to what some of those decisions would be? Like, does a junior get to select wall types, things of that nature, or? Well,
I think I'd answer this question as a junior. You can select wall types and then socialize them with the project manager. And you could say, maybe your project manager or your job captain said, go away and think about these things. And of course, most firms will have a library of wall types already that you can go draw from. When I say draw from, look at, and maybe you have a meeting with your job captain or project manager, and you talk about, certain walls have to be rated, certain walls have to be acoustically rated, and so forth. And in that discussion, and maybe through that discussion and whatnot, then you can, the job captain said, go away, work on the plan, and come back with a marked up plan of what you propose in terms of different wall types for this particular project. And they might do that. So it would be that kind of a direction that would give to you, that somebody ultimately would have to go over it and just say, yeah, I agree with you. Or, hey, we should change that to a shaft wall. You can't build a rated wall that needs to be drywalled on both sides. How do you get into a shaft? How do you get out of a shaft if you happen to be the guy who happens to put the board up? So there's assemblies there that are specific to certain requirements, like a mechanical shaft. You can't build from the inside of the shaft. You have to build from the outside and build up the wall to get a shaft wall related. So you're going to get that kind of education as you start working in your career. Any other questions?
Sorry, I actually did have a question. So if you wanted to, let's say, further your education and get your master's, when you do finish that program, um, what kind of position, where would you start? What would it be the same? Would you start at the same point as architectural technologist? Would you like, yeah, how would you start? How would you go
Well,
about?
in turn, well, um, you know, the salary would probably be a little bit more because you'll have more education. I'm going to tell you right out, you know, it's not 2 years and you're coming in at the same salary level as a junior technologist, as somebody who's gone to university and gone to education. You're going to have a higher salary. There's no question
Mm-hmm.
there. In terms of how you start your career, will be no different than a junior technologist, right? You are going to be starting at the bottom end of the food chain in terms of design. You'll be given tasks, design tasks by somebody allocating those to you to be able to perform. So, you know, when you go to the master's program into the university, it is a similar educational process in terms of starting your career when you get into a studio and start to learn about those things and how a studio works and what kind of expectations you have for that particular architectural firm, because not every architectural firm works in a similar way. The net results are going to be the same. We all have a common denominator to do design and get buildings built. But how that operates within each studio, I can only speak for Dialogue, and I know that you would be working at a junior level in the design side, doing stuff, maybe even building models. Hey, somebody designed something, go build this model, this graphic model out of styrofoam or whatever. So it sounds like maybe your career path, you want to head towards university, given your question.
Yeah, but I guess I kind of wanted to see, like, I guess it is worth it, but I just kind of
Well,
wanted to see what I would get
well,
into after I'm.
sure. Well, you know, somebody said to me once, you should become an architect, but for whatever reasons, I never did. I still think I have some design skills, not necessarily starting a building to design right off the bat, but certainly on the technical side, being able to offer design once the project is designed and we're starting to do the construction documents. But you need to decide your career path. You might get into an industry working for an architect for 1 or 2 years and decide to go back to university. We have lots of that. We have lots of people who've gone into different career paths, gone back to this particular program, and at the age of 30 come to me and they want a job. Well, it may not be to the salary that they previously had in their previous career path, but they have to start at the bottom. I recognize that because they're a little more mature, that we're going to give them a little bit more salary than sort of somebody that's maybe just 20 years old and got right out of university and right into school and they're starting at the bottom line. But the 30-year-old that might have some skills in other industries brings some value there. So we're gonna offer them a little bit more to kickstart their career into this industry.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seems silent over there, but we're almost running out of time anyway. So if you have a question, you've got 1 minute, and I only have 1 minute to answer. Well, that being said, it looks like there aren't any further questions. So I'm going to just say good luck to you in your career path. I offered my phone number previously. I did have somebody reach out to me for a job shadow. We're not doing job shadows, although, did I ever explain to you how that works? Okay, I'm going to
Just
do
to
that.
us, to
Okay,
myself
I'm
and
going to
you.
do this. I'm going to do this. We used to do job shadows in our industry, in our office. This will be the last, and we can chime out. And the way that worked, you know, people in the industry, whether they've gone to technical school or maybe or in the design side at the university, or maybe just somebody coming out of a grade 10 student wondering what a career path in architecture might be, sometimes would come to our studio. They would eventually come to me asking for a job shadow, and I would say, fine. And what I would do is ask those people to send me a bit of a biography of themselves, who they are, where they went to school, and all that kind of stuff. Send it to me, and I would organize what we call a job shadow. I've been doing it for seems like 1,000 years. People would come in, and I would organize 8 different people to participate in this job shadow. It's a morning or an afternoon, and for half an hour with each of the people, you'd spend a half an hour with them. and they would tell you what they're doing. You'll see people maybe on the sunset side of their career, like myself, maybe a junior tech that maybe got hired last year and is in the industry, and then they said, yeah, I'd like to see this person. Or maybe somebody that in the biography said, oh, I went to the same high school as that person, and I probably had the same the same instructors, and I'd like to talk to that person. That might be mechanical, electrical, structural, who might chime in and offer half an hour of their time to talk to you, to kind of give you a bit of an education. Now that kind of put a halt on it because of the pandemic, but I'm considering looking at doing it in a virtual way, and that is, maybe having and I know you guys go to school, maybe some of you would have an afternoon or part of an afternoon, and doing it virtually. I have yet to get permission through the principal in charge of the studio to say, I'd like to do this restart a job shadow program that we had, that we offer people in our future stars in the industry to come in and chat with a number of different people. Not necessarily come in, but I could set up a Zoom meeting and schedule that for much like you would if you came into our studio. I know Jose came in last year with a couple of other students and went through the studio and met a number of people. I'd like to give back to the industry and to for education for yourselves to be able to do that. And maybe as collaboratively, you guys, if you have some friends in the industry, and I'm sure each of you do, that you have people in your classes, you'd like to do this and you want to reach out to me and say, 5 of us would like to be in this virtual job shadow. Can you set something up? Again, I haven't obtained permission from the principal to do that, and it might be on a trial basis to begin with, but I'd certainly like to try to do that, and rather than me being in the studio, doing it virtually, and at least get something out of that, talking to others rather than myself, to other people like architects, like mechanical people, to give them their perspective. Maybe they share the screen of some of the stuff they're working on. We can do it face to face. Why can't we do it virtually? So that I'm giving some consideration to. So my phone number is 403-472-1829. Okay. When you're done, I'll give you my email address. It's D as in David, M as in Michael, AK, S as in Sam, Y as in Yo-Yo, M as in Michael, EC at DIALOG, DIALOG, design.ca. Happy to hear from you. Happy for you to pick up the phone. Usually I'm okay in the evenings. Don't call me during the day. It's nuts. And so happy to talk to you one-on-one if you want to, for any questions you may have. I'm there happy to help, to give you any more advice I can. Because I just like to give back to those who are going to follow in my footsteps in the career path of being an AT.
Yeah,
I'm done. I'm done. Right on time, or slightly over time.
Yeah, thank you so much taking time out of your busy schedule, David, and have a wonderful day.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, everyone. Good to see you, and look forward to hearing to some of you guys, and wish you a successful career path. We don't hear from you. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you bet. Take care.
Yeah, thank you.